Did you want to do a talk?
I'd like to do a little reading, if you don't mind, and take any questions you have about the book or the subject, or about my great-great-grandfather, and anything you feel comfortable with.
Did you want my license?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
Any questions first?
A little bit about you, maybe.
Excuse me?
A little bit about you. Do you live in New Hampshire?
I live in Las Vegas now.
Oh,
and,
Las Vegas, yeah.
My family moved after the trial at the turn of the century. The whole family moved to California to get away from the stigma.
Oh.
And I didn't find out till I was 40 years old that we were related to the monster. And the book's about waking up one day when you think you've figured life all out, to learn that it's a little different than you thought, and trying to come to grips with understanding that the reason you're here today is because of the conscious decisions that maybe the most evil man that ever lived made.
Sure did.
It's just an interesting town.
So that's a good deal when I'm filling up.
He came from Gilmanton.
Gilmanton. We were just there last night. We went to a dinner at the Gilmanton Winery,
Yeah, it was good.
and the couple that bought the Holmes house invited us over after dinner, so my daughter and I went to the house and went up into the... Hey, good to see you again.
Sorry, everybody.
We went up into the attic where he used to be locked up as a little boy by his father, and he used to look out at the church when he was a small child. And we went up into the room. The owner was concerned. I don't know if all of you believe in ghosts or spirits. Don't know whether I do or not, but we went in, walked through the whole house, and didn't feel anything strange or any energy, anything like that. My heart was beating last night, and but it was a fun thing to do. And they're building the house, remodeling it, getting it ready for the movie that's going to come out there.
Yeah. DiCaprio.
Warner Brothers and Leonardo DiCaprio is going to maybe do one of the biggest movies they've done in a long time.
Well, it's a famous town. Of course, it didn't want anybody to know anything, I guess. So
They're going to know about it now.
you had Grace too there. So hey,
They're going to know a lot about it now.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, rather than let someone at Hollywood tell the story.
Yeah, right.
I thought maybe it'd be better if talked to my family and got them to agree. They weren't happy about it at first, and talked them to agree about maybe we should tell the story our way instead of letting someone else do it. Now they're okay with it.
No, it's paperback.
because Grace had her picture
Yeah.
taken right across the street at the church. In the
$15.99.
I had a lot, so I was in the 50s. Well, she was now 50s.
If you go to my webpage, at the bottom of the home page, there's a piece that Sean McDonald from ABC did with me walking through the church.
Yeah.
We couldn't get into the house when we were there, and then the place where Herman taught school before he left for Michigan to the medical school. And we walked around, and it's a great, they did a nice job if you want to take a look at the video of the center.
It's going to be quite a picture.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Any other questions before I do a little reading?
Yeah, before we leave, I have a picture of my son with you. He gives tours over there.
Absolutely.
To the Mudgett house. So
Absolutely.
It's
I
like,
brought a friend over there, a young girl, and she didn't even know
well,
that it happened. It's like she going, wow, freaked her out. But you know, I want to ask you something. Now you were saying, I had watched on Hulu. They had a documentary about his life and all the stuff that had happened. Now, do you think his psychosis started when he was a child? He was locked upstairs, or did it happen when they took him into the doctor's office to look at the skeleton?
Excellent question. You're getting into an area that I have, I'm on the other side from medical science on. I don't think he had a psychosis.
Okay.
I think he was born evil.
Okay.
I think it's something we all need to start understanding, that human beings can be born evil, and that instead of trying to fix these things, especially one like this that had a higher intellect than any of us will ever be close to,
Right.
we need to either put them down or put them away, rather than let them free and have them hurt someone else.
Right.
But I don't think he had a psychosis. He enjoyed what he did.
Huh.
He was fascinated with the extremes of the human condition. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book the way I did, to maybe see that people could understand. This was a scientist in human pain. and that's what he enjoyed doing. And I'm sorry that I'm related to that, but one of the things we're trying to do now, I'm trying to do a monument and a memorial to the people that died in Chicago at the murder castle. And next week we're going to talk in Chicago about the mayor and the governor and the president helping us with doing a monument that maybe I can give something back. Yes, Simone.
Are you at liberty to talk about the DNA?
Yes.
Okay.
In the book, I write about, and one of the reasons the publishing houses refused me, they offered me first and then refused me, was because I was convinced that he was Jack the Ripper. There is nothing forensic that I can prove that he was Jack the Ripper. I can't. It's conjecture. It's opinion on my part. We have some handwriting analysis that he wrote those Ripper letters, but that doesn't prove he had the knife in his hand. But in the book I also write that I didn't think he was the man hanged, that the guard was hanged in his place. This one we're going to be able to prove definitively yes or no, because we're going to have the concrete dug up. We have to sell 40 or 50,000 books to pay for this, and it's going to take a while, but that's my goal. We're going to have the concrete dug up. We're going to have the Smithsonian hold the concrete, break it apart. They're going to take the remains that's in the concrete, and they're going to compare it with my tissue, and we're going to do a DNA analysis, and we'll be able to say yes or no whether it was him or not. That excites me tremendously. So that's one of the few things, maybe in history, a mystery, that we can say yes, it wasn't him, that someone else, the guard, was hung in his place, as I write about in the book. Have any of you read the book yet? There was a legend about the Holmes curse. After he was hanged, anyone that was involved in his arrest or his trial or his execution either died or suffered terrible misfortune. The New York Times wrote about this horrible supernatural thing. I started researching it. I didn't believe in the supernatural. I worked the other way. What if he hadn't been hanged, and then he had visited these people, like the judge, like the prosecuting attorney, like the man that arrested him? And that's where we're at. And now, when we do the DNA analysis, I'll be able to prove my theories. In the meantime, you'll enjoy the story the way it's written, and that how he was never hanged and he escaped, he waited, and then he went and revisited those people that had upset him terribly. Any other questions? Yes?
Jeff, are there any fingerprints? I've heard conflicting reports that there was a fingerprint.
Absolutely not.
No.
None that I know of. We have something new come in every day.
Yeah.
We had something new last night at the winery that I had never heard about.
Oh, great.
But as far as fingerprints, I doubt it.
Because in the floorboards of the house we found a medical journal that he must have stolen from.
Your journals. Now, okay, last night you talked about you were going to have them tested for
But
fingerprints.
if there's no other fingerprints to compare it to.
I tell you what, I'd be fascinated though. It'd be interesting to see if medical science can work any comparison between his fingerprints and mine, or my father's. Maybe there's a similarity. I don't know. My daughter's saying no, that's not possible. So, but it'd be interesting to see if you have any on the margins. We did that with the books that I found at the Library of Congress in the rare book section there at Congress. They made me put gloves on, and they had a man watching me in a camera. They brought the book out, and it was a fascinating read there. If any of you ever want to do that, you can go sign up, and you can go into the rare book room, and they'll bring the book out that Holmes wrote when he was in prison.
Where is that at?
Washington, D.C. Everything in the book, the locations are all true. They're all true. Anything else?
So let me ask you one more question. Now, they don't know how many people that he had murdered?
You know, he
Yes.
admitted to 27.
Okay.
Everything he said at that trial was a game of chess.
Right.
Everything. Anything he said, you'd better not believe. He was a prolific liar, maybe one of the best. Eric Larson thinks it was over 200 the man that wrote The Devil in the White City, Depraved, The Torture Doctor, those books, they also agree. My numbers, you may have to go up one more digit. He made a comment about he had gone over 36 days once without killing, and it had bothered him in a note that he had made. And if you work that out to where how many years I think he lived, the number is terrible.
He was only, what, 35? If I'm not mistaken.
No, that's if he was hanged. If he wasn't hanged, in the book you'll see, I think he was alive when I was a little baby. But that's conjecture on my part. I can't prove that until we dig that concrete out.
Exactly.
And we're going to do it.
And then they burned the castle down?
No, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's one of the things, and I'm glad you asked that, because anything written about Holmes before, quote-unquote nonfiction, is based on previous books. The Devil in the White City, they said the hotel was burned to the ground at the turn of the century. We started finding out that none of those things were true. We now have a picture of the murder castle with a 1936 Ford pickup parked next to it. We did the test. It's not a Photoshop, it's an actual legitimate picture. So none of those things, and I'm not taking anything away from those great writers. They're great writers, but they assume that things that were said about Holmes before were true, and when you work them back, they come back to where something Holmes had said, or he had wanted believed, and you can't believe any of that. You can't.
So if that place still exists?
No. The federal government bought it in 1937.
Okay.
It was torn down. They built a post office over the top of it, which bothers me tremendously. I don't understand why the federal government would have built a post office, one of our symbols of greatness in our country, when they knew what had gone on before there. I mean, Harper's Magazine called it the place that God allowed evil to run amok, and I think that's very accurate. And they built the post office over it, with existing portions of the foundation still there. When I went down in there, there are the 2 tunnels that Holmes built. To escape the police, if they ever came to arrest him, he would have crawled out the other side of the street and then run away. They're still there. And I still want to know why we would have done that. When I went down into the basement, there is a door cut in the concrete that had been pasted back. I sent a Freedom of Information Act request in, wanting to know when that was cut into the wall and what they were doing. And it would have been in the section that the murder castle basement was in. And they won't answer my questions. They blank it out.
Are they going to try to be accurate with the movie? And will you have a right to say yes or no, or what?
I doubt it.
So it can go off the wall, so.
I doubt it, yeah. They haven't contacted me yet about how they want the movie to go. I know, and Melissa can help me on this, Tom Cruise owned the rights first. He gave up on it. Leonardo DiCaprio was fascinated with the story. He bought the rights. Warner Brothers is working with him now. They actually hired the man. You may have the book here in the store. It's a writer that did Sherlock Holmes, and the title of the cover of the book has a big question mark on it. He's a fabulous young writer. They hired him to do the screenplay and he's working on it right now. But movies go a year, 2 years, and then maybe never. You never can predict that. They're putting a lot of money into it.
So you weren't able to talk with any of your old relatives to know anything about it, and it was just blanked out? Is that more or less what happened?
None of my old relatives knew much about Holmes. I didn't find out till I was 40. My father didn't find out till he was 65. My grandfather had kept it a secret from us. He hadn't told my grandmother. My grandmother wouldn't have married the man if she had known. And she wouldn't have, and which I don't hold against her. But so very, very little of the family knows much about the secrets of Holmes.
Very interesting. It's good to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you all came. Do you have time for me to do a little reading? Okay. I know a lot of people are interested in the factual issues of Holmes. My book is more of the psychological side of waking up one day to find out this was in your background. And I like the book. I had a reader describe it the other day as fascinatingly disturbing. And at the risk of losing sales with that phrase, it's actually, that's what the book is when you read it. It will disturb you, but it will fascinate you. You'll find yourself admiring this monster. And I don't know why we're like that, but human beings have that. We have that in us. And as Simone will tell you, you have a lot of books about serial killers and crime and Jack the Ripper, and we all like to read those things, maybe to find out what's the capacity of the human character. After I found out about who I was related to, I'm going to read 2 or 3 short sections for you. Even more to the point was a vivid piece of evidence I found concerning how best to characterize Holmes. It was a simple sentence written by the man himself. Quote, "For 1 month and 6 days thereafter I took no human life. That duration left me needy." Unquote. I can't remember how many times I reread those words, their directness setting a foundation for comprehension. Whether the statement was made with pride or disappointment, I couldn't tell, but I rather suspect the latter. What I did realize was that when one applied this length of time, 36 days, to the number of years he lived beyond adolescence, the conclusions reached by the experts as to the total number of victims he dispatched turned rather ridiculously low. Worst of all, my knowledge of this man included that part of me I could no longer deny. I owed my existence to conscious decisions this evil thing had made. More even than that, were he not the monster he was, I would probably never have lived. One question began to dominate my life. What was I if he was the living example of evil? I lit my first cigarette in 6 years, and pulled, taking that first long drag all ex-smokers know deep in their hearts and lungs. I held it there contemplating what I just read, my hands shaking as both nerves and smoke settled in. The nicotine buzz settled first, and with none of the accompanying guilt I expected. Lung cancer was the last of my worries right now. I needed time to figure this out. And if a cigarette or a pack or 2 helped me to focus, they'd be staining my fingers for quite some time to come. Concentrating on my smoke, trying to fall back, I thought, how many times has a man been required to conduct his own interrogation as to righteousness? How often has the tortured also been the torturer? What did I do to deserve this? Strange urges had begun to sour the bottom of my soul. Evil, slimy things, before only nightmares, were now real-life contemplations. Impossible to describe, they shifted my brain 90 degrees to the right and left when they hit. When they did, my mind felt as if it were an anvil being slammed by the sledge of an ever or obviously futile search for sanity. Images popped into my head of demonic things, horrible beasts ready to fly off in pursuit of innocence after receiving their orders from me. Insanity, that's the only thing it can be. I took a little out of order there. As if graphic nightmares weren't enough, whispers began to invade my waking world, and at the most bizarre times. Impatient, it seems the voice could no longer wait for my dreams to converse. Anyone watching me during these first few days would have thought me crazy, seeing me stopping without notice, turning circles, looking about as if trying to determine the identity of some invisible conversationalist. They would have seen me doing whatever it was I was doing, suddenly breaking out, talking to myself, full volume, as if a real companion were standing no more than 2 feet away. Insanity personified is what they probably would have thought. The voice was soon everywhere, beside me at my computer, driving with me to work, etc. He commented on my grooming and eating habits. He was there for all of it. We chatted with each other as I read about him. Yes, at some point I gave up arguing with myself about whom or what it was, finally admitting, deep down inside, it was just me. I shudder to think what a tape recording of my musings might have revealed to interested professionals. The voice would often start rather innocuously like this. "Let us not be amiss this fine morning, my delightful boy," he would whisper, then laugh. "Can I reward your long wait with something truly exciting?" Then he would commence telling me about an amazing historical event, scientific discovery, or horrendous piece of torture and death. Or he would point out something I missed in the book, some nuance he was rather proud of. Growing strangely accustomed, I even took to asking him about something that I just read that was over my head. He would always respond, and often in a forthright, scholarly manner. Sadly enough, I began counting on his answers. He adored chatting about philosophy. "You need not feel your silly guilt, Geoffrey, certainly not from desiring to live the instincts you were born with. Men created the concept of guilt to equalize what they couldn't possess. Cease your search, that worthless thing all men do their entire lives, hiding from themselves, for you have found your freedoms." While he talked, a new image of myself began sprouting in my head, taking on a life of its own, possibly evolving from a thing of Herman's making. "Happiness equals instinct, Geoffrey. I mimicked no one or thing or God. Nothing was forbidden to me, and if it was claimed to be, I destroyed it. Destroying weakness promotes our species. Spit on virtue. Tell me, what is wrong with death and killing? I ask you, is life good? If so, tell me how. You can't, because it isn't. It is misery relived over and over again, and those that came into contact with me I did a favor for," unquote. In the back of my mind, I knew the voice was and couldn't be real. The only viable explanation had to be that there was something wrong with my mind. Perhaps the initial stages of mental illness. That had to be it. But how do you account for an illusion so real, so brilliant, and so sympathetic to your own concerns? Quote, "I am real, my son, as you will be soon enough," unquote. I began taking Holmes for granted. Thank you. Thank you very much. If any of you would like me to sign a book, I'd love to. I will. Any more questions? If you have any, let me know. So, to anyone or just my signature?
Actually, can you make one to Mary Morse?
Mary, M-O-R-S-E? Jeff.
No, stay right here.
Simone, do you have the other pen? You want to get it for him?
Thank you. You read my mind.
How did you get out here and doing this? Did Ann's thing invite you, or your agency, or what?
You know, I came out with Sean to do the piece for ABC, and they're going to do another piece. We're coming back out, but when I came out, I saw the house and the center, and then Ellie at Gilmanton Winery was there when we were filming, and she asked me to come out for their dinner last night. And then Simone knows Ellie and the people that own the winery, and she asked me to come.
Good.
How did you first learn about this person in your family? Did your grandfather kept it secret?
You know, it's at
I'm sure it's addressed in your book.
It's at chapter. It's a great question. We were sitting at dinner, and my grandmother was convinced we were related to Robert E. Lee. She even talked my mother, Jeffrey Lee Mudgett. There's probably 1 million people in America that think they were related to Robert E. Lee. She hired a genealogy company for a lot of money, and we have this huge study which helped me with my book tremendously. I can go all the way back to Wales. We had a Mudgett show up at Jamestown, and then moved north to New Hampshire. they told my grandmother, some things are better left alone.
Wow.
And they said, you're not related to Robert Lee, you're related to a horse thief, an Arkansas horse thief. They tried to soften the blow. My grandmother didn't soften anything. And she kept digging. And then they said, no, he killed 3 small children. And he was hung in Chicago in the 1890s. And so it came out, my brother was a very scientific fella. And my grandmother was going to let it go, and my brother brought it up. My grandfather, I can still remember it as clear as day, when he heard the name mentioned in our house, their house, he stood up, his chair slammed back into the wall, the picture behind it, with enough force, the picture crashed to the wall. He went the whole table and said, that name will never be mentioned in this house again. And he pointed at me, and that's in the book about, and I was thinking, why am I involved in this? This man never said 2 sentences to me my whole life. My grandfather was very quiet, never talked to any of us. And the book, what I would love to have someone understand is, the book is not so much about Holmes and the killings, as much more about me learning to love my grandfather when I hated him as a young boy. He used to go fishing. My favorite thing in the world was fishing. He never invited me fishing. And it wasn't because he hated me. It wasn't because he wasn't a good grandfather. He was afraid to be alone with people because of this thing in his background.
Wow.
And the book's more about me learning to love that about him. And maybe it was a confusion. He didn't do the right thing. But it's easy for us all to judge now looking back.